Based on these figures, do you believe the Southfield Police Department reflects the city it serves? And what effect do you believe these numbers mean to the department's community policing efforts?
Thank you. So I'll start with, in answering that question, I was born in this community. I was raised in this community. I attended Southfield Public Schools. I actually see two of my high school teachers here in the audience. I have been part of this community, and the greatest strength when I was growing up here, the greatest strength going to school here was its diversity. And oftentimes I feel like the question is presented as a challenge, and I think it's our greatest strength. It is the greatest thing about Southfield is the fact that so many different groups, so many different religions. But I want to speak to, because you had mentioned the numbers of officers. And 3 weeks ago in the Detroit News, there was an article about the Detroit Police Department, and that they are struggling with this exact same issue. And when I work with my partners across the country, we're all struggling with the same issue. We're in a 0% unemployment, a darn near 0% unemployment, lowest unemployment in 50 years. We have a very challenging mission in trying to increase the diversity, and all law enforcement organizations have struggled with it. With that said, we have the highest percentage of women in both our officers and our command than any other agency in Oakland County. We also have more minority officers than any other agency as a percentage in Oakland County. But we can do better, and we will do better. And that's why I've looked to our collaboration with our Human Resources Department. And when I became acting chief, I sat down with our new HR director and I said, we have to be first to the table for that diverse and highly skilled workforce. We're being beat by other departments who are getting to that table first. And in working with him, we were able to shorten our hiring process. Because when I go to the academy and I have this young person who's interested in working, I need to be there and give them that job right then and there. So that's some of the things we've done with that. The other thing that we've done in working with my partners in the Southfield Public Schools and specifically working with Dr. Green, the superintendent, we're developing a vocational program where the department would be more involved in the actual curriculum of the schools. That's two things. The benefit is I have a more direct engagement with our young people, but I also get to take a look at who could I work with to possibly be the next generation of officer. So to your point, diversity is absolutely critical, and we will continue to work to improve those numbers. And what I'm looking at is how am I going to improve it over the next 12 months, 36 months, 5 years, 10 years. And those are long-term improvements. It is something that is not going to happen overnight, but I am committed to it. And as I mentioned, the numbers that we are at, I think it's proof that we are committed to this already. And we will continue to improve in those areas.
Thanks.
The President Task Force on 21st Century Policing contained a number of recommendations. Please discuss your experiences and success on the two following recommendations: ensuring fair and impartial policing by treating people with dignity and respect, embracing community policing to reduce causes of crime.
Thank you. So looking at fair and impartial, and what I've implemented is our block training. Our block training is an opportunity that we have. Every one of our officers is going to receive a minimum every year of 40 hours. And as part of that, what we've brought in and incorporated in that training is, along with a number of other things, every year we're doing de-escalation training. We're looking at implicit bias. We're looking at the current laws as they change constantly to make sure that we are current with whatever it is. We're looking at how we're using force, and is that best practice for today, not what was best practice 36 months ago. Those are some of the things that we're doing to make sure that we are practicing fair and impartial policing with the officers that we have. To the point of our community policing program, as I mentioned before, I firmly believe that our success in our crime statistics both for our violent crimes and our property crimes, are to the fact that we have such a robust community policing program. The fact that we have engaged on countless levels, whether it be with our chief's advisory that I meet with every month and get to hear what are the challenges, what can we do better, and they will also challenge what we're not doing well. And that's the feedback that we need from our community and that we get. Whether it be our chaplain program, that I have all of the participating chaplains in houses of worship, and they have a voice to say, here's what I need to see out of the police department. Here's what the police department needs to do better. So community policing is a fancy word for saying that we communicate with our community. And that is something that I think that we have done very successfully, and again, I think it proves itself out in how effective we've been as a police department up to this point.
Thank you.
Describe your view of command and how you develop leadership in subordinate commanders.
So Theodore Roosevelt once said, "A leader does not create followers, a leader creates more leaders." And I truly believe that. I was blessed to work directly under Chief Hawkins for 10 years. And he was my direct supervisor during that period of time. And he took the time to allow me, and through delegation and other opportunities, to challenge me to make sure that I had that opportunity. So I see for myself, my opportunity is working with my team and making sure that they are getting the chance to grow and develop. And that's through successful empowerment and delegation of my team. So I think my view of command is making sure that I empower my team, but never relegating the ultimate responsibility for those tasks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next group of questions are situational questions. You have been appointed police chief. On your second day of employment, a Southfield school is holding a regional spelling bee. The event has drawn 500 students, 2,000 parents. As the final round of the spelling bee begins, a heavily armed gunman entered the school wearing an explosive vest. The gunman announces to the school and Facebook Live that he will start killing children in 10 minutes if his demands are not met. What action do you take in the first few minutes and why?
So, Mr. Culpepper, if we're answering what action am I taking in the first few minutes, I want to be very direct. Our officers have trained extensively. We have spent thousands of hours preparing. I have personally made it my mission to make sure that the officers have every tool and resource they need so that every officer that we have on the road is fully prepared to address that threat. And speaking directly to what will happen over the first couple minutes, we will address that threat and we will neutralize that threat. I want to be very clear about that. In the city of Southfield, we have had the incident that we have had to deal with, active shooters. And as recently as a couple of months ago, we thought we had an active shooter in an office building. And what I saw was the fact that the Southfield Police Department is fully prepared to deal with that. First officer made entry within 2 minutes, and we had the building cleared within 10 minutes. I am very comfortable in saying that that is something we are fully prepared to handle. Now, that being said, as we continue that process beyond the 2 minutes, we're then going to activate our partners. We're going to start to work with OCTAC, which is our consortium that we work with in Oakland County if we need mutual aid, which will bring to bear additional equipment, additional officers, additional resources that'll be needed to handle that kind of a dynamic situation. Again, we are prepared initially, but we are also prepared for a more long-term issue. For myself personally, I'm going to be responding to that scene. I'm going to be involved in that scene once trying to figure out a very complicated criminal investigation and how best to deal with that, whether it be working with our media partners who are going to need information, working with our Southfield Public Schools who will have to be dealing with hundreds of students and hundreds of terrified parents. We have practiced dealing with the immediate as well as some of those secondary issues, and we're prepared to deal with it.
After a review of tickets being issued during traffic stops for the last 6 months, you are advised that African American males are stopped 75% more times than other races and receive 50% more tickets than all other races. What actions do you take to correct?
With those numbers, what I'd want to know is where is my challenge? Do I have a systemic problem with my department, or do I have an issue with officers? Because if I have an issue with officers, it will be dealt with swiftly, and it will be dealt with immediately. Whether that is through retraining, direct discipline, corrective action, it's something that the Southfield Police Department has never accepted and never will tolerate. So I want to be very clear about that. Obviously, with your question as it's posed, I don't know that. If I'm dealing with more of a systemic problem, it's something that we will immediately be looking at. It's something that, again, has never been tolerated in the Southfield Police Department and will not be tolerated and will be addressed.
Thank you.
Another situation question. A 10-year veteran of your department is accused of posting racial derogatory statements regarding the Jewish and African American communities on Facebook and on internal police emails. What action do you take?
As an internal administrative issue, I'm going to immediately connect with my partners in human resources and my partners in the legal department to make sure that we're handling this properly. But that officer will not be back on the road. This matter is going to be looked into, and from what you're telling me, this is not a Southfield police officer in the future.
Okay. All right. This is another situational question. Your department is advised by a distraught mother that her son with mental health issues has stated that he's going to a local high school to harm himself and other children who have taunted him for the last 2 months. It's 7:45 a.m. and school starts at 8 a.m. What actions do you take?
I'm going to be working this on a couple of different prongs at the same time. First, I'm going to be activating my law enforcement team to see how are we going to try and identify where this young person is. The benefit that most of us parents know is that a lot of these young people now have cell phones, so let's see how fast we can find this individual, how fast we can. At the same time, I'm also going to be working with my partners in the Southfield Public Schools. This is obviously mission critical. It's the reason that we have such a collaborative relationship with the Southfield Public Schools, because oftentimes our greatest concerns do arise in our school system. So we would be immediately contacting the schools and working with them to decide what's appropriate based on the specific information that we have. If, depending on the actual specifics of the threat, does the young man have access to weapons? What does he have? What are his, what is the state? How much information do we know as to where the vehicle is or this individual? How much specifics do I have? If I believe that it is credible that that young man will be actually at that school, it's something that I will make recommendations to my partners in the school that we divert busing, divert parents, and delay a start to make sure that the safety is taken care of.
Thank you.
This is another situational. On the 4th day of your new appointment as Southfield Police Chief, you are in attendance at a city council meeting when you're advised that a real and credible threat has been received. It has been discovered that a number of packages addressed to senior city employees have been received in the mailroom of the city offices. The person sending the packages is known to be a recently discharged employee who lost his house due to city property tax foreclosure. City Council asks what action you will take.
So immediately upon hearing this information, we're going to start to activate our own internal resources, which is the Southfield Police bomb dog, and we're going to start to figure out how credible of an issue we have. But we're also going to start to work with our regional partners, both in the county as well as the Michigan State Bomb Squad, and start to get those resources brought in immediately. The advantage that I have as the chief of police is I don't have to be smart enough to know everything. I have to know who to call them. And when I start to work with my partners, whether it be my canine officer in the bomb detection unit or my partners in Michigan State Police And I want to work with them to talk about what is the best course of action with the immediate situation, whether or not they're recommending that we immediately evacuate council chambers. And I think a lot of that's going to have to do with the physical location, and then what's the reality of, are we starting to detect something or not? So that's how we would work through it, in working with my partners to determine how best to advise our community that's here physically on site that evening.
Thank you.
In closing, is there any information not previously discussed or asked that you would like to share with the search committee?
There is, thank you. So, as I mentioned, I've made it a mission of my own to make sure that I've pursued the education and the qualifications necessary to be the chief of police. But what I want to talk about is something a little bit different than that. The fact that I come from a family of servants. My father runs a food pantry in Southfield that serves over 800 families a month. My brother will be retiring from the Navy at the end of this month after an entire career in the Navy. My younger brother is a firefighter for the city of Southfield. We have been shown an example of service with my parents, and we've continued that as servants ourselves. The thing that I promise our community, I promise this board, is that I will continue that philosophy of service, and I am a servant leader. I will be accessible to the community. That is what you will get with me as your next chief of police. I truly appreciate the opportunity this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I keep trying to roll forward and I roll back.
Trying to scan it out.
The next candidate is Mr. Charles Mahone, Detroit Police.
Podium.
Charles. Okay.
Good evening.
Hello, sir. Please give us a short description of your experience relevant to the position of Southfield's police chief and why you applied for this position.
So, good evening, everyone. I applied for this position because I have the knowledge, experience, passion, and vision for this job. Knowledge-wise, I've attended the FBI Academy, Michigan New Chief School, hosted by, let me start off. I applied for this job because I'm a little nervous here, so bear with me. Applied for this job because I have the knowledge, experience, of course, and the passion and vision for this position. Okay, let me start over. My name is Commander Charles Mahone from Detroit Police Department, 7th Precinct. And I applied for this position because I have the knowledge, the experience, the passion, and vision to be the chief of police in Southfield. Now, training-wise, I've attended the FBI National Academy. I've also attended the Staff and Command School hosted by Eastern Michigan. I attended Harvard Law School where I have a certificate in negotiation and leadership. And lastly, I am very dedicated and passionate about the business of policing. Now, when I looked at the skill set that were required for this position, it kind of lined up immediately with what I have instilled in me over the years. As the commander of the 7th Precinct is similar size in nature in terms of population and geographic area to the city of Southfield. We also have similar issues. My most prevalent issue in the 7th Precinct is larceny from autos. And when I did my background information on the city of Southfield, I found that we also have an issue here with push steals and larceny from autos. So Currently, I'm sitting on a 30% reduction in larceny from autos issues in the 7th precinct, as well as a 20% drop in crime overall. Now, that didn't come by accident. That came from actually having those critical conversations with the men and women that work with me in the 7th precinct, because they do the work. Hope that answers your question. Thanks.
What would be your top 3 goals for the first 30 to 90 days if you are selected as police chief of Southfield?
So my first goal would be to do a transition audit. I look at a transition audit as kind of like buying a house. You want to look behind each door and see what's in there. So my transition audit, I would actually sit down with, of course, the administrator of the city of Southfield and the 2 deputy chiefs that are in position right now. And I want to find out, what are the outliners out there? For example, where's our highest liability? Is it traffic accidents? Do we have an officer out there that is causing a lot of citizen complaints? Is our personnel actually wearing their body cameras? Those are some of the internal things I would look for. Externally, do I have a citizen advisory board? If so, what are the background of the citizen advisory board members? Do I have a clergy board? Are all religions represented? Those are the type of things I would look for in a transition audit. It would be extensive. It would be internal, and other than personal man hours, it would not be any additional cost to the city of Southfield. But I need to exactly know where the department is right now so I can actually set a vision for where we need to be in the future.
This question is a 2-part question. I will ask the follow-up after the 2 parts are answered.
Okay.
How would you go about measuring the performance of the Southfield Police Department as an organization? And how would you measure the performance of your traffic and patrol officers?
Okay. So where I sit is that I have a traffic enforcement team in the 7th precinct. And when I got to the 7th precinct, they were not performing in the nature that I needed them to perform. And what every citizen here needs to understand is that you should have an expectation to drive through the city of Southfield and not worry about being struck by somebody that's running a red light or speeding. So I actually looked at the production of that team, and I manipulated the personnel to get them where I wanted them to be. My expectations are simple. If we're having a lot of accidents at Evergreen and 696 between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., there better be a traffic car out there ensuring that people are not speeding or disregarding that red light so that we can make sure our citizens actually travel to and from safely. Now, patrol officers, most of the crime that's done, whether it's larceny from autos where they're transporting the tires or your shootings, are done in automobiles. This is a tri-county area where we love our cars. So we have to have those we have to have those traffic stops done by officers. Those traffic stops actually prevent crime, and in a lot of cases, you can actually grab an offender after they actually have actually done something. So traffic enforcement is huge. Again, it saves lives, and it prevents crime, and in some cases, you actually grab a bad guy after they've done something. All right?
Thank you. Follow-up question. How would you deal with a patrol officer who has not written a ticket all year or who has activity levels significantly below the department's average?
I will start with a supervisor, because I want to know, how can this man come to work each and every day and not perform? So the first place I'm going to start is with a supervisor. What is a supervisor doing to ensure that the patrol officer understands the standards of this department? No officer should be afforded the opportunity to come to work each and every day and not perform. So after the conversation with the supervisor, I will bring the officer in to ensure that there is nothing personal going on with that officer. I would reaffirm that he knew what he signed up for and what he comes today, each and every day, what he comes to work each and every day to do. And then I would send him on his way, but I fully would expect that the production would pick up.
What types of police programs and functions would you consider a high priority, and what types of programs and functions would you consider a lower priority?
To me, all functions, depending on what your city is going through, are important, are very important at the time. So I would just say this to you. Traffic enforcement is important. Monitoring our civil liability is important. Community relations is huge. Recruitment, by all means, we need to recruit. So I can go all, there are a number of things that are important. But right now, let's say with recruiting, if you're fully staffed, recruitment may not be as important as it is if you're understaffed by 30 or 40 people. You try to balance things so that when an issue pops up, you have the processes and the people in position to deal with that issue.
You mentioned traffic enforcement first. Is that the priority order that you would put that in?
No. Traffic enforcement is important because, like I said earlier, ma'am, it prevents deaths and accidents within the city. But so is officer welfare. Officer welfare is very important. Officers don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that's important. Those community connections are important. If an issue happens right now in Southfield and I don't have any community connections, it's not going to be good for me. You got to make those community connections. So,
Thank you.
all right, ma'am.
The city of Southfield was named one of the nation's most livable metro area suburbs by Forbes magazine. The 2010 census lists the racial makeup of the city as 70.3% African American, 24.9% white. The Southfield Police Department sworn uniform officers' racial makeup is 73% white male, 14% female, all races, 9% male African American, 2% female African American. Based on these figures, do you believe the Southfield Police Department reflects the city it serves? And what effect do you believe these numbers mean to the department's community policing efforts?
Wow. What I would say to you is that we need to be recruiting more black officers because your police department should reflect the people it serves. In terms of your community outreach, a lot of times we are attracted to those that look like us. However, I will tell you this, I have great relationships with both black, white officers, but we need to do more recruiting of black officers, and I would start off by going down to the local colleges, Wayne County Community College District, University of Phoenix is not far from here. They have a criminal justice program to attract the officers we need so that we can have more diversity in this police department. We could also advertise nationally, and I'm sure this council may have thought about all these things, but we definitely have to drive home the point that we want qualified black applicants here in the city of Southfield.
Thank you very much.
All right.
The President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing contain a number of recommendations. Please discuss your experience and success on the following 2 recommendations. Ensuring fair and impartial policing by treating people with dignity and respect. Embracing community policing to reduce causes of crime.
Okay, so the first one, could you repeat that for me again?
Ensuring fair and impartial policing by treating people with dignity and respect.
Okay. Those are the critical conversations you have with your people on a day in and day basis. That shouldn't be something that is not talked about. It's been my expectation, whether black or white officers, if you create the correct culture in your department, they will do what's necessary to ensure they follow what you expect. And you do that, again, by having those conversations. We have cultural diversity training. In the past, we've also done, we send the officers to the homeless shelters to actually serve food to our citizens, because you do have some working poor in the city of Detroit. In addition to that, when we have celebrations where I actually give awards to officers, I like to do it out in the community. The reason I like to do that is so the officers actually have an opportunity to interact with our citizens in a situation where the citizen is not a victim, where the citizen is not being stopped for a traffic violation. You try to build that bond during positive events, every opportunity you get. All right. And the second question, sir?
Well, for a second, I hear a lot. You hear that noise or talking? That's distracting for him.
That's true.
They close the doors, please? They don't? Okay, all right. Okay. Second one was embracing community policing to reduce causes of crime.
So community policing really has to be a culture. It can't be a program. I hate when I see someone, referring to community policing as a program, because to me that signifies that you're going to start the process at one point and you're going to end the process at another point. Community policing has to be a culture, and again, you do that by inviting citizens into your precinct, not just during National Police Week, but during, Halloween season. You have something specifically for your citizens where they can come in and actually fellowship with the officers. I invite my citizens to come in and feed my officers. Sometimes we feed the citizens. So it's a back and forth thing where you actually engage your community every opportunity you get so that you can build that relationship. You need to build credit with your community. The only way to do that is through spending time. Myself, I volunteer on 2 community relations boards, Jefferson East Incorporated, as well as the Chandler Park Conservancy Board. Both of those entities are nonprofits, and they're built to actually stabilize and improve the lives of Detroiters.
Thank you.
Can you describe for us your view of being in command and how you could or would develop leadership in subordinate commanders?
So mentorship is very important. Now, you can do it one or two ways. You can establish a formal program of mentoring, or you can do it on a case-by-case basis. Me personally, I like to do it in a formal setting, and you can do that through standardized training throughout the department to ensure everyone has an opportunity to grow internally, because as I see it, if they come to work every single day and they decide that they want to make this a career, it makes sense to mentor that male or female so that they become the next so that they can take the next leadership position that becomes available. And if you impart that mentoring now, you will know exactly what you have in that person when they get elevated to the position of sergeant, lieutenant, or deputy chief.
Thank you.
All right.
The next questions are strictly situation questions. You have been appointed police chief. On your second day of employment, a Southfield school is holding a regional spelling bee. The event has drawn 500 students, 2,000 parents. As the final round of the spelling bee begins, a heavily armed gunman enters the school wearing an explosive vest. The gunman announces to the school and Facebook Live that he will start killing children in 10 minutes. if his demands are not met. What actions do you take in the first 3 minutes and why?
The first thing we got to do is, of course, I'm going to put out a call. And the call is I'm going to be asking for, unfortunately, I'm going to set up a triage area. And I'm going to be asking for neighborhood ambulances to go to a triage area, because there's a good chance that we are going to have someone that may get shot or die. We're going to put local hospitals on alert also. And then we're going to try to formulate a plan where we can go in and mitigate this threat. If that individual is telling us that he's definitely going to explode that vest, we have to take him at his word. And in these situations, sometimes there are casualties. But my mindset is that I would like to limit the number of casualties as much as possible. So I would like to try to eliminate the threat as soon as possible, prayerfully preventing him from detonating his explosive device. So we have to do this as stealthily as possible. If the parents, you said this was on Facebook already?
Yes,
It's live?
it's live.
It's live? Yeah, so we gotta do some crowd control. We gotta do some crowd control, because you got 2,000 parents, and all of them gonna wanna get to their kid. So we have to get through the crowd as soon as possible and try to deal with this threat. And that's what I would do. We would try to eliminate the threat.
Thank you.
The next question is also situational. After review of tickets being issued during traffic stops for the last 6 months, you're advised that African American males are stopped 75% more times than other races and receive 50% more tickets than all other races. What actions do you take to correct this?
First thing you do is you look at the citations and find out what they were written for. And then you need to have a conversation with your team. And the reason why I say that, when I say team, I'm referring to the supervisors as well as the officers writing the tickets. Because if the population in the city of Southfield is 20%, all the tickets should not be going to blacks. It should be some type of balance. Last month, when I say last month, I'm referring to the month of April, for example, for me. My team wrote about 900 tickets. And when I looked at those tickets, what I found is that less than 2/3 of them were written to the city of Detroit residents. The rest were written to, people coming into the city of Detroit speeding, getting involved in accidents. I'm okay with that mixture. All your tickets should not be written to one race, one sex. If you have that, you have an issue, and it's an issue you have to discuss and ensure that your personnel know your expectations. Because what I've found is that it doesn't matter what your nationality is, all of us break civil laws at some point. Speeding, disregarding the stop sign. The tickets should be written appropriately.
This is another situational question. A 10-year veteran of your department is accused of posting racial derogatory statements regarding the Jewish and African American communities on Facebook and on internal police email. What actions would you take?
Well, the first thing we need to do is I would like to, of course, serve a search warrant so I can actually find out if the post came from him or her. The second thing I'm going to do is bring that individual in with his union representation and explain to him or her the process we're going to go through. And the process is we're going to have an investigation. And if that investigation shows that you are responsible for those posts, there's going to be some fallout for you. and I'm going to go through the disciplinary process. That officer is going to be afforded due process. The other thing I'm going to have to do is, because social media is so vibrant in our community today, I'm going to need to get before a camera someplace and let my community know that I am taking care of this situation and that we're going to have a very transparent investigation. And then once the investigation has concluded, I'm going to get back before that camera and allow my citizens the opportunity to know what happened as well as vent if they need to vent. Because there's going to be a lot of venting going on. But the officer has to receive due process. I need to update the community. And the last thing I'm going to do is remind the rest of the team, both civilian as well as civilians and the officers, of our social media policy and that we need to adhere to it. Because you think about it, you have a right to be a citizen, but you don't have a right to be a Southfield police officer. And if you give the city a black eye, maybe this isn't the right job for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another situation question. Your department is advised by a distraught mother that her son with mental health issue has stated he's going to a local high school to harm himself and other children who have taunted him for the last 12 months. It's 7:45 a.m. and school starts at 8 a.m. What actions do you take?
Well, at this time, I hope I have the principal's number, because that's what I'll be looking for, so I can call the principal of that school, provide him or her with that information so that they can be on the lookout for that student. In addition to that, I'm going to rally as many resources as I can to that school to try to prevent that kid from getting in there and harming himself or others. I will be trying to determine whether or not he has a cell phone in his possession. Can we use that to track him? Maybe he has that Find My Cell Phone app. His mother has that. Maybe we can locate him that way. But my goal would be to get that child in custody without hurting him and preventing him from hurting others within the school.
Thank you.
On the fourth day of your new appointment as Southfield Police Chief, you are in attendance at a city council meeting when you're advised that a real and credible threat has been received. It has been discovered that a number of packages addressed to senior city employees have been received in the mailroom of the city offices. The person sending the packages is known to be a recently discharged employee who lost his house due to city property tax foreclosure. City Council asks what actions you will take.
So the first thing I want to do is rally some resources to the city-county building, because if you're in session, I want to make sure that the packages are not just a distraction to get you to come out of the building. He's out there in the parking lot, or she's out there in the parking lot with a firearm ready to pick you off. The second thing I'm going to do is secure the boxes. We're not going to be looking through the boxes. We're going to need to check the boxes, make sure they don't have anything explosive in them or white powder or something that you can actually absorb in your skin. Call a hazmat crew in for that. Have the bomb squad check the boxes to make sure that, again, we don't have to worry about those issues. The other thing is we're going to try to do is locate the offender and lock him or her down so that we can ensure that this doesn't happen again. And of course, we're going to seek prosecution. I guess that'll be handled by the prosecutor, but we'll be putting together a great case to take to the prosecutor so that we can actually get this man some help, because obviously there's something not right when an individual does things like that.
Thank you.
In closing, is there any information not previously asked that you would like to share with the search committee?
Well, I would just say, first of all, thank you for involving me in this process. I've learned a lot. Second thing I would say is that, I grew up in the city of Detroit on the east side. I was raised by my mother. Back when I joined the police department, I looked at it as a job. It turned out to be a career that I absolutely love. I love the business of policing. I love my officers. I try to show that to them each and every opportunity I get. I think that along my passion and the fact that I've reached out to the officers like I have has allowed me to turn around the 7th Precinct in the manner that I have. This is something I don't take lightly, this position here in the city of Southfield. This is something I would absolutely like to obtain. And I know with me at your police chief, I know I'm a little nervous today, but we're going to move this place forward. You know, we're going to solidify some community connections. I'm going to take care of the officers as well as the civilians, because when I did my research, what I found out is that Southfield is still a great place to work, it's a great place to live, and it's a great place to play. And with that, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.